welcome to the program. You are with Arise News in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Ahead over the next 60 minutes, all the global headlines you need to know about. I'm with me, Michael Caddy, and you're watching The World. Our top stories: bloodshed in Burkina Faso, many fear dead as militants attack the army headquarters and French embassy in Ouagadougou, the capital. And at least 59 dead in Europe as freezing weather causes havoc across the continent. Plus, bring it on, US President Donald Trump says trade wars can be a good thing. And one of them, Lewis Hamilton, says is in a top league of great sports champions as he begins his quest for more F1 glory. We'll begin in Burkina Faso, where at least 15 people have been killed, where gunfire and smoke rocked at least two important sites in the country's capital, Ouagadougou. Authorities in the country are blaming what they call Islamic extremists for the separate attacks on the French embassy and the army headquarters. Communications Minister Remy Danjuno said that the dead include 8 assailants and 7 soldiers. He said that the death toll for the soldiers was likely to climb as many others were seriously wounded. Burkina Faso has suffered at least 2 terrorist attacks in the last few years, as well as an attempted coup in 2015. There are also political tensions in the country between supporters of former President Blaise Compaoré and those who want him and his allies to be charged for human rights violations during his time in office. France's Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, also declared the incident a terror attack. Well, earlier, my colleague Ferdinand Duroha spoke to security experts at Damu and began by asking him if Africa was failing to protect its citizens.
We're in an era where the enemy is living together with us, and that enemy takes advantage of vulnerabilities and then exploits those vulnerabilities. In the case of Burkina Faso, they have been on the prime list target of terrorist groups in the Sahel region for a couple of reasons. There were 2 targets that were attacked. One of them was supposedly the military headquarters, and then the other one the French embassy. Now, if we look at the role that France has been playing in the Sahel region, firstly, Operation Barkhane, that you have about 4,000 soldiers, French soldiers, deployed across parts of Sahel and targeting terrorist groups in Sahel. You have Burkina Faso as a country represented in the G5 coalition. Now that makes both countries, Burkina Faso and France, primary target of insurgent attacks. We've seen the attack today, the 3rd attack in as many years. It's been either Western targets, that's hotels where Westerners patronize, or in this instance, they struck the heart of the French representation in Burkina Faso, which is their embassy. So it's a very strong message to France and to an extent the Burkinabe government, telling them that look, we have you in our sight, and now we're coming after you, even at a place that you consider well protected. Understandably, an embassy is a hard target, quote unquote. A military headquarters is a hard target, and the fact that they were able to strike these 2 targets is a strong message they're sending to both the French government and the Burkinabe government.
Well, indeed, strong messages, and these also needed some form of coordination. And I'm just thinking at this point in time, well, let's look at the security situation right now. Well, isn't it an indictment on the security system that this militants or whoever they are, do these coordinated attacks and, still are able to hit targets?
My understanding of the lapses that were exploited that allowed the attacks has to do, I think, with the poor intelligence collection capabilities by the individual countries, as well as the regional effort in the collection and sharing of intelligence. I see a lot of international support for countries, but unfortunately I do not see that support translating in intelligence. The fact that they were able to penetrate a country like Burkina Faso without any form of intelligence coming from either France, in this case France was actually attacked, speaks to me that the level of intelligence collection, the level of intelligence sharing among the countries both in the G5 and other neighboring countries is very poor. If you look at the collaboration between the G5, where Burkina Faso is represented, and the wider Sahel region, such as the multinational joint task force, that's also a very poor intelligence sharing capability. So I blame that for what we're seeing. I also blame the deprivation as well as the poverty that are existing in these countries. These groups are able to recruit easily. They're able to get either supporters or sometimes active participants easily because of that level of deprivation. In the case of Burkina Faso, we have a lot of mistrust, especially between the previous government and current members of this government. So that's the kind of atmosphere that is driving this type of insurgency.
We've seen pockets of attacks across Africa. Well, in Somalia, it's quite heavy. Well, just read about one in Burkina Faso, also in Kenya and some other places. The insurgents gaining ground in Africa?
Not to my understanding. Yes, they are becoming bolder because they are seeing vulnerabilities, and clearly the vulnerability is coming from the fact that African countries are not cooperating among themselves. France, for some reason, has championed the G5 initiative, abandoning the multinational joint task force, which is, as you know, headed by Nigeria. I'm not seeing enough synergy between the multinational joint task force and the G5. So clearly, African countries, AU in particular, needs to play a bigger role in terms of ensuring a fusion of efforts between these African countries. Remember that the basis of this jihadist movement is more or less the same. So if you are dealing with a multifaceted problem and you are not cooperating, then honestly you are allowing them loopholes to come through. Recent such by the US, the global jihadist campaign in Libya, in Syria, has now pushed these guys down to Africa, and we're not seeing a corresponding increase of efforts by African countries. So therein lies the problem. Better cooperation among the leadership of African countries, and then more importantly to address the root causes of the insurgency, and that's governance. We need to speak about that. The major failure that allows recruitment is one of governance.
You're watching The World with me, Michael Caddy. Time for us to go on a short break, but when we'll return, we'll cross over to Los Angeles for a special report from Biola Alabi. When we return, stay with us.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. There's a special breed of achievers out there that are called tomorrow's people, the highly creative ones who live in the future. They imagine what will be and strive to make it happen. They are bold. They refuse to wait for the future. Tomorrow bends and conforms to their ideas. At Access Bank, we share the same sentiments. We've been able to grow our bank to become a leading player in Nigeria with a strong presence across the continent, adopting best practice in everything we do. Our mantra for success is simple: speed, service, and security. Those who shape tomorrow, strive for, and demand perfection. At Access Bank, our service culture of speedy response and drive for excellence is the blueprint for creating customer experiences that will echo for generations. Come, let's work together and take tomorrow.
Welcome back to The World with me, Michael Caddy. Now, it's that time of the year again when everyone who is important in the film industry tries to make an effort to be in LA, that is Los Angeles, for the Academy Awards. Well, Arise News has a special team there that will be bringing you all the updates and all the behind-the-scenes headlines you need to know about. And right now for me on this year's awards, I'm now being joined live from LA by our very own Abiola Alabi. Abiola, looking so elegant. I don't know, tonight, this is early morning here, I don't really know, but over there you're looking so elegant, looking very African. However, there've been a lot of, traction about the nominees for this year's, Oscars, especially for Best Picture. Get Out has really, really gotten a lot of traction. Why is it sustained?
Thank you. It's so great to be talking to you. We're here on the red carpet at the beginning of the 90th Academy Awards. Preparation is underway. And like you said, Get Out has been one of those films that has sustained its traction throughout the year. And this is really rare because this is a film that was released early last year in February. And a lot of times people don't like releasing their films too early in the year, especially if they think it's going to be a contender. So that goes to show you how people really didn't think much of this film in the beginning. It was a small film. It was made for $4.5 million. It earned $225 million at the box office. Once again, this was a small film, but it is something different from Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is best known for his comedy act on Mad TV, and so when this came up, people were really surprised. No one really knew what the story was about actually before it was released, and so the minute it was released and people saw that this was really an allegory on sort of a black experience in America, and also sort of a social, almost like a social experiment of what would happen if the seats were turned, and also putting everyone in the skin of what it feels like to be black in America. And I think with everything happening from the social element and the political element of the backdrop of America, this was really timely. But really also it was a film that people didn't know what to expect. Jordan Peele is being nominated. He's the first African American that's being nominated for 4 categories. So they have, one of them is Best Picture, they're also Best Screenplay, Best Original, and Daniel Kaluuya, who is also part of our breakout stars that we've been looking at, is also nominated as Best Actor. This is really unheard of. So I think this is why this film is almost like the film that wouldn't go away. It continues to gain traction. People continue to want to watch it. And everyone has said, if you haven't seen this film and you're listening to anything that's on TV about this film, stop listening and go watch this film. This is what we've been hearing over and over again. And as someone that has seen Get Out, I loved the film myself. I think that it is going to walk away with something. I don't think it's going to walk away with the big prize, but I think that this is obviously the beginning for Jordan Peele. And if Jordan Peele, I listened to an interview where he said he was really worried that he might not be able to make another film. But I think with Get Out, this is just the beginning of us seeing more and more and talking more and more about Jordan Peele. So I know next year, in 2 years, we're going to be talking more about him.
And I know of great interest to you is the nomination for the Best Actress. What about, the Best Actress category? Are there any performances you believe have been left out this year?
I think with the Best Actress, Best Actress category, Frances McDormand has been the darling on the awards shows. I mean, she was at the Golden Globe. She took it home. She also took home the BAFTA. So on Sunday night, people aren't going to be much surprised about that. But there were some performances that people did feel were left out, and I also believe was left out. I saw Battle of the Sexes. I thought Emma Stone was brilliant in it. It's a story really about women. I thought that with all the Me Too and some of the activities and activism happening around women, I thought this was a film that really should have had some more nods, even at least 1 or 2 of the ceremonies, but it really didn't come out in any of the ceremonies or any of the awards. It didn't really get a lot of nominations. So that is something, and that is a performance. But I think based on last year, Emma Stone was La La Land. I think people just sort of felt like, okay, not this year. Another performance that was great, but once again, it was a great performance, and it's almost sort of like a almost like a rite of passage. If there's a Academy ceremony, Meryl Streep has to be there. Her performance in The Post was amazing, but once again, I think it is mostly a nod to that performance and not really necessarily going to be a nomination. But what people are really talking about is the Best Supporting Actress category, because that for me is what they've been calling the battle of the moms, and the people that they're really looking at for that is going to be Allison Janney for I Am Tanya, and also might really be the surprise of the night is Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird. Laurie Metcalf she's 62 years old. She's a woman that has been on the scene. She was in Roseanne, but she's someone that for the first time she's actually getting the industry's acknowledgement, and she's getting more nods and really more recognition. And she's 62, so which goes to show you it's never too late to become an overnight success. But she's been at this game for a long time, and I think that this is one of the performances we're going to be looking at. The other mom in that category is Mary J. Blige with Mudbound, which is also about a strong woman and a mom that has to send her son off to war, and what it's like for him to come back when he comes back and has to readjust to Jim Crow laws in America. So this category is really about the three moms, but everyone's money is on Allison Janney. She's an Emmy nominated. She's an Emmy Award winner. She's won the Globe. She won the BAFTA. So once again, she's the one person that people have their money on. But I think that Laurie Metcalf, this is just the beginning of seeing more and more of her, and I think that also Mary J. Blige, everyone has just been talking about her performance. So once again, Sunday night, anything can happen. Hopefully we won't have any mishaps with the envelopes, but I think it's definitely going to be a battle of the moms in that category.
Hopefully we're not going to have, hopefully this year we're not going to have that kind of envelope debacle. But let me put you on the sports, Biola. In the best male category, we have Gary Oldman, Daniel Kaluuya, and of course Denzel Washington. Who do you think is going to carry the day?
Well, I mean, this is a category that, once again, the Best Actor category has two African-American male in it. Very, very interesting, especially in a year where we saw some really strong performances from men all around. Timothée Chalamet is another rising star in Call Me By Your Name. Him and Daniel Kaluuya have been recognized as up-and-coming stars, and so we won't be, they're going to be there, but this is not really their night. Tonight, on Sunday night, it's going to be Gary Oldman's night. Gary has been at this game for a long time, but even if you saw him in this performance as Churchill, he totally transforms, and this is exactly what the Academy Awards looks for. They want full transformation. They love it when an actor goes into a character and you can no longer see the actor and all you see is the character. And especially when you do biopics, these are really all the things that tick the box. And also Gary Oldman has been at this game for a long time, so we know that this is really going to be his to take home. But I think at the same time there were some really new actors in this category. I think Daniel Kaluuya, he did Get Out, and right after Get Out he did Black Panther, which no one really had thought about, and now he's really the talk of town. So Daniel Kaluuya, who is not only African American, but he's actually British American of African descent from Uganda. So in a way, I feel like as an African, as Africans at these awards, we're really also seeing more and more of the African story being told, or African talent being discovered, or people of African descent. So this category is something that we are all supporting, but I think this is a Gary Oldman category. But yeah, we're looking out for it. But one of the things we've been told, the Academy Awards has done so much to make sure that there are no envelope debacles this year. Security is on high alert, and as you can see behind me, there's all this preparation going on. So Sunday is still a couple of days to go, but the preparation is 24/7, and we're gonna keep you all updated on that.
Biola, I trust you on that one, that you're going to keep us updated on all the happenings right there at the Oscars. Thank you very much for giving us insight into what's going on at the night Oscars right there in the United States. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right. You're watching The World. Plenty more still ahead, including another attack in northwestern Nigeria kills at least 3 people. Stay with us.
It's been a great year for agribusiness. With our weather and the amazing range of soil available to us, the fallow lands are birthing their magnificent potential. The Central Bank of Nigeria, under President Buhari's administration, is spearheading this progress, and everyone is getting in on it. The local farmer on the Anchor Borrowers Program and the international investors, taking advantage of the new policies geared towards easy foreign investment, stabilized exchange rate, and FX market. The harvest is green and lush, and we are just getting started. Come, invest in Nigeria. Discover what the green in our flag really stands for. Nigeria, ready for business. An initiative of Greenfield Assets Limited.
Welcome back to The World with me, Michael Caddy. At least 59 people have died, and most of them in Poland, as freezing conditions continue to cause havoc in Western Europe, while transport delays have left thousands of commuters stranded. In Britain, the army has been called in to rescue motorists who have been left stranded on the roads. Large parts of the continent have been suffering from the grip of the Siberian weather system that has brought the coldest temperatures for several years. Most of the dead are thought to have been homeless people. And to Azerbaijan now, where at least 24 people have been killed after a fire ripped through a drug rehabilitation center in the country's capital, Baku. That's according to local media reports there. Emergency services were called to what is thought to be a single-story building when the blaze started at 6 a.m. local time this morning. The health ministry said 200 patients and staff have been evacuated and 34 people have been rescued from the building. The building is said to have hard barred windows which would have made escaping difficult. While local news media, APA, said at least 4 people were taken to hospital and the fire has since been put out. Authorities said that the country's president, Ilham Aliyev, has visited the scene and was overseeing the rescue efforts. He has ordered an investigation into the blaze of the fire. And at least 3 aid workers have been killed in a suspected Boko Haram attack in Nigeria's northeastern town of Ran in Borno State. That's according to the UN spokeswoman in the country. While 2 more aid workers are missing, one is feared dead, while the other is thought to have been abducted. Witnesses said that the killings took place when unknown gunmen attacked a village where hundreds of internally displaced persons, or IDPs, and humanitarian workers are camping. It comes after reports that a number of attacks by insurgents in Nigeria's northeastern states is on the increase. All the victims in the latest attack are believed to be Nigerian citizens. And earlier, my colleague Ferdinand Duro also spoke to security expert Kabiru Adamu about this story and began by asking him the situation was getting worse.
I hate to be the having of bad news, but unfortunately this one-off incidents are going to continue for the simple reason that our
That's quite strong.
army is stretched and the targets are available. There were 2.
What do you mean? Back to interrupt. What do you mean when you say the targets are available?
In the sense that you have this type of situation where you have isolated locations with minimal security presence. By minimal, I mean what the army can afford at that point in time. Add that to the current situation where our army has little capabilities in terms of light force deployment. What do I mean by that? You have a situation where you have remote locations. Ran, the capital of Kalabalgi, where this incident happened, is about 130 kilometers west of Maiduguri. To my knowledge, the nearest military capability is either Maiduguri or Mongunu. And at the time it happened, it was close to the evening period. It happened started from around 7, thereabout. Well, 5:30 to 6, and then ended close to about 9 in the evening. We do not have the kind of capabilities, our Air Force, not the military, to send reinforcement speedily that would stop the insurgents from carrying out that type of attack. So you have a situation where you have this type of spread, and then tie that to the limited capabilities for light force deployment. And definitely the situation will continue, especially since we have these groups living together with us and studying us and noting the vulnerabilities as well as exploiting these vulnerabilities. In the case of RAN, I would like to emphasize, this is the second time that a major incident is happening in RAN. The other time it was an accidental dropping of bombs on a target that the military thought was an insurgent target, and then you are having this. So it's a major blow, especially to the humanitarian community.
You know, I was just going to go there at this point in time. Well, it leaves that the humanitarian, people walking there with some element of fear. And what do you think the Nigerian government should do? Trying to reinforce the fact that things can indeed get better.
It's very difficult, frankly, from a military point of view, for the Nigerian government to do more than what it's doing. I would rather see a change in strategy. Yes, the military effort is fine, but where the challenge is in the residents, the people of that community, taking ownership for the war. How do you do that? To show to them in a clear and consistent manner that this war is being fought for them. This current government has done quite well. It's not enough in terms of changing the narrative around how the military component of the counter-terrorism strategy is being fought. But people, unfortunately, are yet to take the ownership of the war. The prevention and countering violent extremism strategy launched by the Office of the National Security Advisor, people are yet to understand it. It was launched in Abuja. The people of the affected region in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa, they are yet to. If you take somebody in RAN as an example and ask him what this is about, he doesn't.
Ethiopia's parliament has voted to approve a state of emergency declared last month aimed at quelling unrest in the country. The move was first taken when there were fears of violence after the country's Prime Minister Ali Mariam Desalegn resigned unexpectedly last month. The parliament held an emergency session today despite it being a public holiday and voted overwhelmingly for the state of emergency announced last month. But in a sign of the growing divisions within the ruling coalition, more than 80 legislators oppose the measure, saying it's violated fundamental freedoms of the people. While the state's emergency has been condemned by human rights activists who say it's just there to suppress the political opposition. Israeli police have questioned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife as part of an investigation into a corruption case involving the country's telecom giant. It is the first time that Netanyahu, who as Prime Minister also held the communications portfolio until last year, is being questioned over the affair known as Case 4000. The development comes ahead of Netanyahu's visits to Washington, where he is to meet President Donald Trump and speak before the pro-Israel lobby AIPAC next week, where police have recommended indicting Netanyahu on corruption charges in 2 other cases. Netanyahu has denied any wrongdoing. He has also told his supporters that the investigation will prove his innocence and assured Tel Aviv that it will not affect his ability to lead the nation. Netanyahu has been a dominant figure in the politics of Israel for a number of years and has maintained a tough stance against Palestinians and in the Middle East. Waiting for a short break now. Business is up next, including Britain's Prime Minister hits back at the opposition and EU over Brexit, setting outlining a vision for a United Kingdom outside the bloc. Stay with us.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
You're welcome back to The World with me, Michael Kelly. 8 Turkish soldiers have been killed in an offensive on a Kurdish-held enclave in northwestern Syria. That's according to Ankara. Well, the army also said 13 others were wounded in the operation to oust the Syrian Kurdish People's Protection Unit, or YPG, from Afrin. Local media said that one of the Turkish evacuation helicopters failed to land when it came under fire from militants. Witnesses say Turkish commanders called for airstrike support, after which they were able to carry out the rescue and recovery operation. The military death toll has now reached 41 since the launch of the operation on 20th of January. Well, US President says he sees no problem with trade wars following widespread fears in response to his promise to impose tariffs to protect American steel companies. He made the comments on Twitter while promoting steep tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. While Trump says firm action is crucial to protect US industry from unfair competition and to bolster national security. But rather unsurprisingly, his comments haven't been met with approval from other countries. Here are some of his reactions from around the world.
Die Bundesregierung lehnt solche Zölle ab. Diese Zölle würden die
The German government rejects such tariffs. These tariffs would hit our international business trade hard. The problem of international overproduction in steel and aluminium can't be solved by one-sided tariffs by the US. A trade war will be in nobody's interest. It will not only not be in Europe's interest, but not in the interest of the United States either. We always expressed our interest in a vital, fair and free trade partnership with the United States, and many other countries want that too.
The
US has imposed hundreds of anti-dumping and anti-subsidy measures on most of the imported steel and aluminium products. It overprotects domestic goods. If countries around the world all follow in the steps of the US, it will have a serious impact on the international trade order. Given that the global economic recovery remains sluggish and that the steel and aluminium industries are facing challenges in all countries, everyone should face the situation squarely and jointly work out a solution, rather than taking trade restriction measures unilaterally. We urge the US to be restrained in taking trade protection measures and to follow the multilateral trade rule and positively contribute to the global economic and trade order.
Now, for more on what's happening in the United States on the business front and more, we're now across over live to New York to talk to Arise business editor Andrew Schmertz. Andrew, you heard the reaction from around the world over President Trump's comment. How is the market reacting to his comment, and what's happening generally over the Atlantic?
Yeah, well, the reaction here in the United States is much of the same. Even in his own party, Republicans throughout the day came out strongly against the trade tariffs. The markets reacted with an initial big sell-off on Wall Street. They recovered most of the losses at the end of the day, but a lot of people very worried, in part because no one really knows what these trade tariffs will look like. Even though he's talking about 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum, does it include all countries? Does it include some countries? Does it include Canada, where we actually have a trade import-export there? We do both with Canada, and it's pretty popular and profitable for companies on both sides of the border. So it's kind of unclear. I will tell you that the Europeans have joined the fight over this trade war, at least in the rhetoric. The president of the European Commission says that the EU will retaliate if President Trump institutes the trade tariffs. Specifically, they're going to target specific United States that have Republican-leaning legislatures and the companies in those states. For example, they may issue tariffs against Harley-Davidson in Wisconsin. Well, Wisconsin is where the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, is from. Or tariffs against Kentucky bourbon, Kentucky, where the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is from. So they may be taking retaliatory actions, at least in words, against specific pressure points they hope might change President Trump's mind. All we know is that nothing has been officially announced yet. The White House now talking about late next week, so maybe there's some wiggle room there. In other news, there's still more fallout from the gun situation. Delta is swinging back at the state of Georgia. Lawmakers voted this week to block a $50 million tax credit that Delta is due to receive because Delta ended its relationship with the National Rifle Association. Delta says, quote, its values are not for sale in a scathing memo today from the CEO. And it does say it plans to review all of its business relationships. Delta made the decision after the Florida school shooting and comments made by the NRA. Delta is based, of course, in Atlanta, and it says it has no intention of leaving the state. Now, more on guns. Outdoor shooting company REI, outdoor sporting goods company, REI says it's suspending its business relationship with gun accessory company Vista Outdoors. REI says Vista has failed to take any action or make any comments following the school shooting in Florida, and it will not resume business until Vista does so. And LL Bean announcing it is raising the minimum age to buy a rifle to 21, and that's following several other changes this week. More so, the private equity firm Blackstone Group tends to vote its shares in the gun manufacturer American Outdoor. American Outdoors owns Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson shares have been falling 27%. It says its sales are significantly down. Blackstone is the majority investor in American Outdoors, and it says it's going to vote its shares because it's, quote, time to do something about guns. So there may be some big changes here. Congress, of course, not really doing anything in the United States, and maybe market forces that start driving this conversation. That's the latest from Business News. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Back to you guys.
All right, Andrew, before I let you go, very quickly, I haven't seen the market this week and how it has reacted to some of the comments of President Donald Trump. What's in for next week?
So next week we get a whole bunch more of economic news. It's hard to predict what's going to happen on any given day. I mean, look at this week. This week there was blockbuster news almost every single hour. We haven't even talked about the Russia investigation. That's not impacting the markets right now, but that seems to be heated up. On economic news, we're going to get two key jobs reports. We get the ADP private employer payroll report on Wednesday, and then on Friday we'll get the February jobs numbers. Those numbers expected to be really good. We got a lot of good, solid economic news this week. We got consumer sentiment, consumer confidence, personal income, personal spending, all up. So all of the economic news seems to be trending well. It's just a whole bunch of political chaos that's going on that seems to weigh on the markets on any given day.
Thank you very much. Andrew Schmertz, Arise business editor from New York. Thank you very much for your thoughts and your analysis. And of course, moving on to other stories now. US President Donald Trump's daughter is being dragged into the White House issued following reports that our business dealings, as well as those of her husband, Jared Kushner, could be subject of interest to the FBI investigators. Arise chief Washington correspondent Eric Ham has more on that issue.
It looks as though it's like this noose is tightening just as well as it's beginning to grow and the net is getting much larger. And so now we know that the FBI has a counterintelligence investigation that's looking specifically at this Vancouver deal that Ivanka Trump was involved in relating to the Trump empire. And so there is a hotel condominium skyscraper in Vancouver that Ivanka Trump was a part of. Now, this could be routine or it could lead to something more, because we do know that just as Jared Kushner is trying to secure a top secret clearance in the White House, so is Ivanka Trump. And so this is pro forma, but we do know now that there's this counterintelligence investigation which suggests that it might be more. In addition to that, we now know that Bob Mueller is looking very closely at Jared Kushner's business dealings and interactions in the White House with key executives, where we now know that his company, the Kushner family, got these massive loans from both Citigroup as well as the Apollo Corporation. And so now we see that Bob Mueller is looking very closely at that, and Donald Trump is becoming increasingly frustrated at all of the bad press that he sees both his son-in-law and his daughter getting as a result of their engagement in the White House. Here's the problem that we see is that even though Jared Kushner stepped away from his family business, he did not step away from his investment within his family business, and that he didn't put his investments in a blind trust, which is what you would typically see from people with the type of entanglements that a Jared Kushner or even a Donald Trump would have. We just haven't seen them do that. And so now what you're seeing is it appears as though Jared Kushner is now taking an active role in shaping policy that also has impacts on his family business. And so that's what Bob Mueller is specifically looking at. And given where we see how successful the Mueller probe has been and the number of guilty pleas as well as indictments, this is something where I think the Trump family as a whole needs to be and should be very concerned about.
Our correspondent Eric UK's Prime Minister Theresa May has promised to respect the results of a British referendum in which voters decided that the kingdom should leave the European Union. In a major speech that was watched closely by both Brussels and the UK, she outlined a vision and what a government seeks to achieve in more detail than ever before. And May called on the EU to be ambitious and work with London to achieve a Brexit deal that is in the best interest of both parties.
Our departure from the EU causes very particular challenges for Northern Ireland and for Ireland. We joined the EU together 45 years ago, and it's not surprising that our decision to leave has caused anxiety and a desire for concrete solutions. We have been clear all along that we don't want to go back to a hard border in Ireland. We have ruled out any physical infrastructure at the border or any related checks and controls. But it's not good enough to say we won't introduce a hard border. If the EU forces Ireland to do it, that's down to them. We chose to leave, and we have a responsibility to help find a solution. But we can't do it on our own. It is for all of us to work together. And the Taoiseach and I agreed when we met recently that our teams and the Commission should now do just that. So existing models do not provide the best way forward for either the UK or the EU. But before I turn to what a new and better model might look like, I want to be straight with people, because the reality is that we all need to face up to some hard facts. We're leaving the single market. Life is going to be different. In certain ways, our access to each other's markets will be less than it is now. How could the EU's structure of rights and obligations be sustained if the UK or any country were allowed to enjoy all the benefits without all of the obligations? So we need to strike a new balance, but we will not accept the rights of Canada and the obligations of Norway. The second hard fact is that even after we have left the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, EU law and the decisions of the ECJ will continue to affect us. For a start, the ECJ determines whether agreements the EU has struck are legal under the EU's own law, as the US found when the ECJ declared the Safe Harbour framework for data sharing invalid. I am in no doubt that whatever agreement we reach with the EU, our future is bright. The stability and continuity of centuries of self-government, our commitment to freedom under the rule of law, our belief in enterprise and innovation, but above all the talent and genius of all our people, and especially our young people, are the seeds of our success in the future, as they have been the guarantors of our success in the past. I look forward to discussing our future partnership with our European friends. Because although we are leaving the EU, and in that regard we will become separate, we are all still European and will stay linked by the many ties and values we have in common. And because it is only by working together that we will find solutions that work for all our peoples. Yes, there will be ups and downs in the months ahead. As in any negotiation, no one will get everything they want. We will not be buffeted by the demands to talk tough or threaten a walkout, just as we will not accept the counsels of despair that this simply cannot be done. We will move forward by calm, patient discussion of each other's positions. It's my responsibility as Prime Minister to provide that leadership for our country at this crucial time. By following the course I have set out today, I am confident we will get there and deliver the right outcome for Britain and the EU. A generation from now, what will be remembered is not the rough and tumble of negotiation, but whether we reached an enduring solution cast in the interests of the people we are all here to serve. So my message to our friends in Europe is clear. We know what we want, we understand your principles, we have a shared interest in getting this right. So let's get on with it.
Theresa May, the British Prime Minister. Earlier, my colleague Ferdinand Durocher spoke to Arise business analyst Bode Oshosami. He began by asking him for his reaction on Theresa May's speech.
I agree with most analysts when they say that this was the most comprehensive, detailed speech that she's ever made on Brexit, clarifying her vision and what the United Kingdom wants. So that already is a plus, because we have some detail, or much more detail than we've had before, even though there are still many areas. And she said that there will be another speech concerning financial services to clarify some of the issues around financial services. But she's made it clear that it would be a different scenario after March 2019. It wouldn't be the same thing. She made it very clear that no one will get all that they want, so both sides will have to concede in one way or the other. There will be sacrifices, and the decision to leave was not just hers, it was a country's decision, and everyone has to come together to help to find out which I think are the right things to say. She also clarified that EU rules will apply, but only through UK courts, which makes sense. And the UK are not abandoning all the agencies. So there are agencies like the European Medicines Agency, the aviation agencies, where they would still be involved and make whatever contributions they need to make. And there will be like the single digital market, where they don't want to be part of it. So it's a bespoke comprehensive agreement with clear principles. She also mentioned what some of those principles were. One, there will be reciprocal binding agreements. There will be an arbitration mechanism that is independent of both parties. So you wouldn't have one party adjudicating if there are conflicts, which is what the EU initially proposed. And then on the issue of skills, they are going to be very careful and perhaps soft in ensuring that everyone can get access to the skills that are going to be needed. So we're not going to have a very hard stance on immigration, is what I suspect will happen. So, but what she doesn't say, I think, is in talking about Norway and other free trade agreements, these were countries that came together with an appetite to do a deal together. In this case, these are countries going apart, and the reaction particularly from the EU, seems to be that there is no appetite for this kind of comprehensive thing, and she's been told to pick up something off the shelf, which she's saying is not a starter for her. So how all this is resolved, it will be interesting, but what I see is that the work is really just starting. The easy part is dealing with the Parliament of the UK. The hard part is facing the 27 other countries who are waiting for her in Brussels.
And let's talk about reaction now. Now, how do you think the markets will be responding to this speech?
And we believe that they're still waiting to hear the reactions, particularly from Brussels. Barnier, the chief negotiator, very unenthusiastically said, well, it is clear what the British now want, so they have a plus for clarity, although another spokesman of the European Parliament did say there is no appetite for this elaborate approach. And so there have been mixed reactions. Even in business, the Institute of Directors gave a qualified endorsement, although they raised some issues around the timelines, whether it was possible to do such a comprehensive customs partnership within the time that they're envisaging. And then you also have reactions coming from other groups. But I think largely, I would say, even though those who were stuck against the harder types of Brexit remain in their position. So Corbyn predictably is saying this is a non-starter, there is no progress here, there's so many problems just raised with no solutions. Sturgeon is also not as impressed. So nothing really has changed, I think, in terms of the stance in the UK, but obviously she is the Prime Minister and she has to move on and do her job, which is what she's doing.
Entertainment news now. Jay-Z has knocked Sean Combs out of the top spot for the world's richest hip-hop hot artist. That's according to Forbes magazine. What the magazine says, Jay-Z upped his worth from $810 million to $900 million in the past year. That jump is due to the increase in value of his interest in a champagne and cognac company and ownership stakes in Roc Nation and the Tidal streaming service. Diddy, who dropped to second place, also increased his fortune in the past year by just $5 million thanks to the growth in De Leon tequila, a brand he owns. Dr. Dre ranked third with $770 million, largely due to his stock in Apple. Drake and Eminem have followed, but with far less at $100 million apiece. As millions of Hindus around India and the rest of the Asian subcontinent celebrate Holi, the first festival of colors, Indians in the UAE joined in the festivities. Where as part of Holi, people smear one another with color powder and spray each other with squids guns. The 2 days festival of Holi is mainly celebrated on Friday this year. But as countless variants and traditions and some festivals began days ago, while its roots are religious tied to many ways the god of Krishna, Holi is also seen as a celebration of good versus evil and of a good harvest. Well, time for us to look at sports news now. Premier League clubs are not expected to introduce video assistant referees next season, even if football's lawmakers approved them on Saturday. Reports say clubs only agree on some of the reasons to review game-changing incidents. The International Football Association board is expected to approve VAR when it meets in Zurich in time for this summer's World Cup in Russia. It is currently being used in selected domestic club cup matches. The system was described as comical and embarrassing after Tottenham's 6-1 FA Cup win over Rochdale on Wednesday, when a goal was disallowed and a converted penalty overturned. It is expected that any domestic league or competition would have to adopt VAR protocols for every game. We'll stay with English football. Antonio Conte says Chelsea need to aim higher in order to avoid being left behind by Pep Guardiola's rampant Manchester City side. Well, Chelsea, last year's league champions, are 22 points off leaders City so far this season and are down in 5th place. Asked whether the top 4 was now the limit of Chelsea's ambitions for the forthcoming season, should City continue to dominate, Conte said it was up to the club as a whole to be ambitious. In motorsport and Formula One now, world champion Lewis Hamilton has likened himself to tennis legend Roger Federer, as he declared he should have no problems in beating Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel again this season. Well, despite completing fewer miles than any of his rivals during the weather-hit opening testing in Barcelona, Hamilton ominously ended on top of the time sheets with the fastest lap of the week. The 33-year-old British driver is gearing up for his assaults on the 5th championship to join only Juan Manuel Fangio and Michael Schumacher as drivers who have won the F1 title on more than 4 occasions. To boxing now, British fighter Kell Brook has made weight for his match this weekend as he aims to become the 2-weight world champion, while Brook was slightly heavier than opponent Sergey Rabchenko, weighing in at 153.7 pounds ahead of his Russia's 153.4. This fight will also mark the first appearance in the boxing ring for Brook, since he lost his IBF title last year to American Errol Spence Jr. at Bramall Lane. He is aiming to avoid a 3rd successive defeat. His painful home loss to Spence, in which he suffered a fractured eye socket following the bruising defeats at the hands of the General Golovkin. Let's remind you of our media headlines here on The World before we go. Bloodshed in Burkina Faso. Many feared dead as militants attacked the army headquarters and the French embassy in Ouagadougou, the capital. And at least 59 dead in Europe as freezing weather caused havoc across the continent. Plus, bring it on. US President Donald Trump says trade wars can be a good thing as long as it will benefit American businesses. You've been watching The World with me, Michael Kadhi. Please keep it here on Arise News. And from the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching.